All right. Welcome to another deep dive. This time, we're going to be talking about the Social Security changes coming in 2025.
Yeah.
We've got two sources for this. We have the official update from the Social Security Administration, and we also have a recent news article that kind of breaks things down a little bit further.
Mm-hmm.
And, my grandmother actually relies on Social Security.
Oh, wow.
So this is going to be pretty interesting to see how this all shakes out. What do you think? I mean, how big of a deal are these changes going to be for people?
Well, I think this is something that's going to be affecting a lot of people. I mean, from retirees to people that are receiving disability benefits.
Right.
With all the talk about inflation, it's really important to kind of dive in and really break down what exactly is changing.
Yeah, absolutely. So the SSA, they announced a 2.5% COLA increase for 2025.
Okay.
And they say that the average retiree is going to see an extra $50 per month. Now, any increase is welcome, of course.
Right.
But I'm kind of thinking with prices going up on everything, is $50 really going to make a difference?
Well, and that's a really important question because, it's interesting that 2.5% increase is actually lower than the 3.2% that we got in 2024.
Oh, wow.
Which, they say inflation is cooling off, but it's still like, are we really seeing that?
Really? Yeah.
So it's a really important point for a lot of people.
Yeah, for sure. So how do they even come up with that COLA number?
Yeah.
I mean, to me, it's always been kind of this mysterious thing, like, who decides what goes into that basket of goods that they're tracking?
Right. Well, the COLA is actually based on what's called a Consumer Price Index for urban wage earners and clerical workers.
Wow.
It's a mouthful.
That's a mouthful, yeah.
We'll just call it CPIW for short.
CPIW.
Yeah. And essentially what it does is it tracks price changes for a specific set of goods and services like food, housing, transportation, and healthcare.
Okay.
But the debate is really whether this basket truly reflects the real expenses that seniors are facing. So, for example, healthcare costs, right? They tend to rise a lot faster than general inflation.
Right.
And so they might not be fully captured in that CPIW calculation.
I see. So like 2.5% on paper, sounds kind of decent.
Yeah.
But if your grocery bill has gone up 5% this year, is $50 really going to cut it?
Exactly. And that's why it's so important to understand the nuances of these adjustments.
Yeah.
I mean, the 2025 COLA might seem reasonable when you compare it to the past decade's average of 2.6%.
Okay.
But again, it's really, are we keeping pace with what people are actually experiencing?
Right. The actual cost of living. Okay. Now, the article also mentions something about how much people will be paying into Social Security as well.
Yes.
Something about an increase in the taxable maximum.
Right. So that maximum earnings subject to Social Security tax is going to increase to $176,100.
Wow.
From $168,600 this year.
Okay.
So, if you're earning above that threshold, get ready to contribute a little bit more.
Oh, man. So I never really thought about that, how my own contributions play into the bigger picture of Social Security funding.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so if more people are paying in, does that mean that the system is in better shape?
Well, it's definitely a part of trying to make sure that we're keeping the system going.
Okay.
It's not the whole story, though.
Yeah.
I mean, increasing the taxable maximum brings in more money, but then there are questions of is it fair to ask higher earners to contribute more?
Right.
So it's a really complex issue. There's not an easy answer.
Yeah, no easy answers. Okay, so let's switch gears now to the Supplemental Security Income Program.
Okay.
The SSA announced some updates to SSI.
Yeah.
And honestly, I'll be honest, at first glance, they sounded pretty technical and confusing.
I could see how it would seem that way.
Yeah.
But these changes are a really big deal for people that are receiving SSI or applying for it.
Okay.
The details themselves might seem technical, but the impact on people is going to be really significant.
So break it down for us. What are we talking about here?
So they're making 3 key updates. First, they're changing how they calculate what's called in-kind support and maintenance, or ISM.
Okay.
And they're doing that by excluding food from that equation.
I see.
The second thing is they're expanding a policy nationwide that's going to help SSI recipients that are related to their landlord get a rental subsidy.
Oh, okay.
And the last thing is they're going to start incorporating SNAP benefits into their means testing process.
Wow, that's a lot. So what does all of that mean for people who rely on SSI?
Well, the really interesting thing here is that it might actually open the door for people who were previously denied SSI to become eligible.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So imagine someone who is just over the income limit because of how food was being factored in.
Right.
Now that food's excluded, they might actually qualify.
Wow. So it's like the rules of the game have changed.
Exactly.
And some folks that were sitting on the sidelines can get in the game now.
Right.
So what should people do if they think they might be impacted by these changes?
If you think you might be eligible now, reach out to the Social Security Administration.
Yeah,
Don't wait. There's a chance you can start receiving benefits.
absolutely. Information is power.
Yeah.
And in this case, it could mean accessing, some financial support. Speaking of planning for the future,
Uh-huh.
the article also mentions something about changes to the retirement age, right?
Yeah, there's been talk about potentially increasing the full retirement age.
Okay.
So right now it's 66 to 67, depending on when you were born.
Right.
But they're talking about moving that up to 68 or even 70.
70. Wow. That seems like a long ways off. I can't even imagine working that long.
It's important to remember that this isn't like a sudden change in 2025. It's a gradual thing.
Okay.
It's part of a long-term plan to make sure Social Security is going to be around for a while.
I see.
People are living longer now, which means they're going to be receiving benefits for longer.
Right.
So this is one way to keep the program going.
It makes you think about how everything's connected, right? Like lifespans, retirement age, how much people are contributing, it all fits together.
Absolutely. And that's why it's so important to understand these changes
Yeah.
and how they might impact you personally.
Okay, so let's pause here for a second and think about our listener.
Oh.
We've given them a lot of information.
We have.
What do we even do with all of this?
It can feel overwhelming for sure,
Yeah.
but just remember, you don't have to take it all in at once.
Okay.
It's more about understanding the key takeaways and how they relate to you.
So step 1, don't panic.
Right.
Step 2, don't tune it out completely.
Exactly.
What would you say is like the most important takeaway for listeners so far?
I would say the most important thing is to remember that these changes are coming
Okay.
and they're going to impact you in some way.
Yeah.
So don't wait until 2025 to start thinking about it.
Yeah.
Now is the time to get informed and make a plan.
I love that. Don't bury your head in the sand. Okay, everybody stick around for part 2 of this deep dive, where we're going to look at what these changes could mean for your financial future.
Yeah.
We'll be right back.
So, before the break, we were talking about, how the KOLA increases might not be keeping up with how much the cost of living is actually going up.
Yeah, and it's concerning, isn't it?
Yeah.
All these people, depend on these benefits, and they might not be able to afford, basic expenses anymore. It's like what you were saying earlier. A 2.5% increase doesn't really help if your rent just went up by 8%.
Yeah, exactly. And, this isn't just like a hypothetical.
Right.
There are a lot of studies that show that more and more seniors are having a hard time affording even the basics.
Yeah.
Like food, housing, healthcare.
Right.
And, for people with disabilities, it can be even harder.
Yeah, definitely. So if the system, the way it is right now, isn't really working, how do we fix it?
Right.
How do we make sure that people can afford to live? And how do we make sure that Social Security is going to be around for future generations too?
Right.
I mean, my niece just got her first job, and it makes you wonder, what's it going to look like when she retires?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And, there isn't an easy answer. One of the ideas that's been floated around is to raise that taxable maximum even more.
Yeah.
So right now it's capped at $176,100 for 2025.
Right. We talked about that earlier. But wouldn't that mean that higher earners would end up paying a lot more?
Yeah.
I mean, wouldn't they say that they're already paying enough?
Right. And that's the, kind of the difficult situation with all of this. Like any change is going to have, pluses and minuses.
Right.
Another idea is to look at the Chiali formula itself.
Okay.
Some experts say that the way we calculate it now with the CPIW doesn't really represent the true cost for seniors and people with disabilities, especially healthcare.
So find a way to make it more accurate.
Yeah, make it reflect what people are really spending.
Okay, but wouldn't that be a huge change to the entire system?
Oh, for sure. It's not a decision to be made lightly.
Right.
There are a lot of factors to consider.
Yeah.
And then, of course, there are, smaller things you can change that might help things run better.
Like, there's no easy solution.
Yeah.
It sounds like any fix is going to mean that some people benefit and some people, maybe don't.
Right. And so we need to have these conversations.
Mhm.
We can't just pretend that there's not a problem.
Right. We need to find a solution.
Exactly. We need to talk about it and weigh the pros and cons and figure out a way to keep Social Security going.
Okay, so let's be practical for a second. let's say I'm listening to all this talk about changes
Yeah.
and I'm getting worried about what's going to happen to Social Security.
Yeah.
What's like the one piece of advice that I should listen to no matter what happens?
Well, I would say don't panic,
Okay.
but also don't just sit back and do nothing. Take control of your own finances the best that you can. That means saving, investing, planning for retirement, and looking at other ways to have income besides just Social Security.
I see.
These programs are meant to be like a safety net.
Okay.
They're not meant to be your whole plan.
Hope for the best, but prepare for the worst.
Exactly.
So I know we've been talking a lot about the problems with Social Security, but it does do a lot of good too.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
My grandmother couldn't afford her medication without her Social Security check.
Ah.
It really helps her.
And that's really important to remember. Social Security has been so important for so many people.
Right.
It's helped so many seniors get out of poverty.
Yeah.
It helps people with disabilities.
Right.
And it gives working families peace of mind, knowing that there's something there to help them.
It's easy to get caught up in all the worrying about it, but it's really, a good thing.
Yeah.
It shows that we care about each other.
Absolutely. And as we finish out this part of our deep dive, I want to leave you with this thought. The future of Social Security might feel uncertain sometimes.
Yeah.
But we can do something about it.
Okay.
We have the power to shape these programs. We have to get involved, and we have to talk about it.
That's really powerful. I feel inspired. Stay tuned for part 3, where we'll talk about specific ways that you can help make sure Social Security is strong for everyone. We'll be right back after a quick message from our sponsors.
Okay, welcome back to the deep dive. We've been talking a lot about Social Security.
We have.
The COLA increase, the changes to SSI, the retirement age adjustments.
Uh-huh.
I don't know about you, but it's a lot to take in. I'm kind of feeling hopeful, but also a little bit concerned.
I think that's a really natural reaction.
Yeah.
We're talking about people's livelihoods here. It's important.
Right. But you said before the break that we're not powerless,
Yeah, exactly.
that we can do something to make sure Social Security is strong for everyone. So what can we do? What's the plan? The first thing is get informed.
Okay.
You know what they say, knowledge is power.
Right.
We talked about setting up my Social Security account and using the SSA website, but that's just the beginning.
So where do we go from there?
Well, there are lots of great organizations out there that focus on Social Security. They can help you learn more.
Like AARP,
Exactly.
the National Committee to Preserve Social Security and Medicare.
Yeah, those are great resources.
Okay.
They have all kinds of information, fact sheets, updates on policies. Sign up for their newsletters, maybe go to one of their webinars. Really learn everything you can.
Become a Social Security expert.
Well, maybe not an expert,
Well, close enough.
but at least informed. And then once you're informed, you can start speaking up.
Oh, okay.
Talk to your elected officials.
Yeah.
Tell them that Social Security matters to you.
Let them know that we want to protect it.
Exactly. And you can call them, write them an email, send a letter, whatever works for you.
Make our voices heard.
And don't forget, you're not alone in this. There's power in numbers.
Okay.
You can join groups, go to rallies, spread the word online. The more people we have speaking up, the more likely they are to listen.
United we stand, divided we fall. So we're learning and we're contacting our representatives.
Right.
Anything else we can do?
Talk to people.
Really?
Talk to your family, your friends, the people you work with. Don't be afraid to bring it up.
Make it a normal conversation.
Exactly. The more we talk about it, the more we understand.
Okay.
And the better chance we have of finding solutions that work for everyone.
I have to say, this whole deep dive has really opened my eyes.
Yeah.
I've learned so much about how Social Security works and what we can do to protect it.
It's been great talking about this with you. Social Security is more than just a program.
Right.
It's a promise.
Okay.
A promise that we'll take care of each other, that will help those in need, and that everyone can live with dignity.
I love that. So what does all this mean for our listener?
It means that you're not helpless. You have options, you can speak up, and you can make a difference.
Learn, get involved, and do something.
And remember, this is just the start. There's always more to learn and new ways to get involved. So thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We hope you feel ready to help make Social Security strong for everyone.
Thanks for listening.